Welcome to The Complete Musician, creativity at its core, exploring innovative musical ideas, thoughts, and techniques for the modern musician in today's society, with your hosts, James Nagus and Drew Phillips.
Welcome to The Complete Musician. I'm Drew.
And I'm James.
We're trying something new out here at The Complete Musician. We're doing a different kind of format now with our podcasts. We're going to have one of us play host and the other kind of chime in whenever they feel like it.
Because the last couple that we did seemed a little scripted. We obviously had the whole thing planned out. But I think this will be more fun. And hopefully it'll be a little more interesting to listen to as well. And I don't know, it's more fun for us. So
and we typically, after we record, think, why can't we just record like we talk? It's a lot easier.
Yeah, and also doing it this way, there's hopefully less editing involved. Oops, I gave it away. There was editing in the last couple of episodes. But we just don't have time for that now since we're teaching all day. So hopefully this will facilitate that as well.
Hopefully.
So today's episode, which, Drew, you had no idea what this episode is about since I'm preparing it.
I have no idea.
If you had to guess, what would you guess?
Tacos.
I mean, I kind of wish we were. We could have an episode on tacos.
We need to do this from Taco Bell.
Well, we need to get Taco Bell as a sponsor. I think they were our unofficial sponsor a couple episodes ago. We had a little blurb in there. But no, unfortunately, this is not about tacos.
Darn.
Any other guesses?
Nope.
Today's episode is, and either I'll put in a drum roll or I'll just leave me saying I'm going to put in a drum roll, recording. So today we're going to talk about recording, and it's part of being a complete musician because it's an element of music outside of just playing your instrument. And within recording, there's a lot of different applications. So we're just going to go and we're going to talk about a few of them. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the use of recording for practicing. And this is you using recording to help you practice and learn. So what are your experiences for just yourself recording yourself? Do you do it when you practice? Do you listen?
Oh man, I record myself all the time. When I practice, I usually put my phone on my stand, and even with my really not so great quality iPhone speakers, when I record myself like playing a video, just a little passage, I can get so much from it, and I encourage my students to as well, because I can learn so much about intonation, time, whether or not my sound is really even. I use it. It's a great practice technique for me.
Is it enjoyable to listen to yourself?
Absolutely not. It's like the worst experience to listen to myself practice. But it's when I record myself, I try to think of it as like this is a take, as if it were like recording for something important, and it almost puts an added pressure because it makes you like step up to performance mode because you know you could watch it or you don't have to watch it when you're done. You can easily delete it, or you could listen to it and critique yourself.
And especially, I think, for people who are preparing for auditions, where, I mean, you have one shot. Just having that little extra element of like, well, this is my take. That I know some people who teach in the studios, they have like the red light approach. Like when the red light's on, it's time to go. Because the recorder is on. And luckily, we don't record onto tape anymore. It's digital, so you can do extra takes. But, yeah, I mean, for me as a practice tool, I never recorded myself when I was, for a long time. Because, well, number one, the technology wasn't as portable and easy as it is today.
You're old.
Oh, I remember putting a tape recorder behind the piano to record stuff when I was really young. I mean,
I've done that too.
That really dates me a little bit. And then before that, I would turn on the wax cylinder and start carving that up.
Wow, but, you're a lot older than I thought. You've aged well.
Oh, thanks. But it's something recording practice that I've found recently, especially like you said, is helpful. And I think when we play, we're not always having the analytical side turned on. Or at least, many of us as players, we don't have that. And so we just don't hear everything that's happening, because either we perceive it differently than we hear it as a recording, or we're so focused on the act of music making that the listening becomes passive. And so I think engaging the listening and the analytical side is a great tool. Now, one of the dangers is only using it as a negative thing, like just to pick out what's going wrong.
That's a good point, because you're right. I do use it to listen and prepare for final things, but I do try to use those recordings to also pick out the good things I'm doing. That, like you said, not only can your listening become passive in the critical manner, but it also sometimes becomes passive in the things that you're doing really well. And sometimes I've recorded and listened and thought, oh, actually, this intonation isn't as bad as I thought, while also listing other things that I really need to work on.
And also, like you mentioned, sometimes it's even useful just to record yourself and then not even listen to it, but just turn on the recorder, see what happens. And if you don't think it'll be productive or useful to listen to it, just delete it and move on.
Just the knowledge that it's there is it just puts that added intensity, I think. At least it does for me when I record myself when I play. I urge all my students to do it, and it's so quick and easy to pick out a 2 or 4 bar phrase of whatever you're working on, and then just kind of hitting record, hitting record, play, stop it, and like you said, listen or not, and it gives you immediate feedback, which I love.
And that's a perfect segue to the next kind of component of this, because this was talking about using recording yourself. And the next kind of area is, for those of us that are teachers, how we use recording in our studios for useful and pedagogical applications. So you mentioned a few. A lot of it applies how we use it ourselves to how we encourage our students to do it, but specifically in a lesson situation, how illuminating it can be to, a student plays something and you ask, so, what did you hear? And they go, I don't know.
Because I wasn't listening.
Right, and that's usually the answer. So if you have a recorder going, I know when we were both at Iowa, they had the Wenger practice rooms that had the recording built in, that when they worked, they could tools. Because you can just turn it on and listen, and of course the student always goes, I don't want to listen to that, because it's, again, the negative side of things coming out. But still, to being able to just in the moment, record and then listen back immediately is a tremendously useful tool.
And I've used recordings, and when I've taken lessons with really amazing horn players, I've taken recorders in and just set it and played to record the whole lesson for myself, which again I urge my students to do, even if not with me, with other people that they take lessons with, just because that person, it's a great teaching kind of thing and moment. I want to listen back and know exactly what they say so I don't forget it later when I'm by myself in a practice room.
And I think sometimes what our teachers tell us doesn't quite sink in the moment, but maybe a couple days or weeks or even months or years later, we go listen back, go, oh, that's what they were saying. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so the next part of recording here, and there's a lot of stuff that we could obviously talk about within even practicing and using it in a teaching application, but we don't want this podcast to go on too long, so we're going to move right along to use of recording in your own portfolio, or this is you making recordings, whether it's for festivals, whether it's for a job application down the road, whether it's just for record or, for whatever reason. I definitely encourage people to record yourself often. And again, this isn't just like I'm going to run through a practice session and that, boom, done. But this is taking a solo, taking the time to record it in a high-quality manner, with a pianist or without if you don't have access. But what are your experiences either recording for yourself or, did you wish you recorded more throughout the last couple of years, or what are you doing now in that regard?
I like to record every performance I do, because like you said, recording for your portfolio, you want to amass as many recordings as you can of yourself, especially if one turns out to be just super fantastic, then that can be something that you use. But if not, then it's kind of a place marker to where you're playing, like your ability level at that moment, and you can see through the years all the things that you've improved on. But my experience is, like I said, I like to record everything that I do as high quality as I can. It's really useful for, again, kind of what we said, knowing, what are the things you still want to work on and how you think you're doing.
And I know we both recently went through the job application cycle for teaching positions, collegiate teaching positions, and the portfolio is a major component of that, having recordings. And not just having recordings, but having basically perfect recordings. They have to be in order to compete. And it's really the same thing with a lot of festivals these days, too. Recordings have to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any excuse for someone to submit a recording that's not perfect. We have an infinite number of tries to get it right. There's just no reason why.
If you start early enough, you have an infinite number. It's if you wait to the last minute, that's when people can fall into trouble. No, I have an application due tomorrow and I have one semi-okay recording. Am I going to submit that and not represent myself in the best light? Or should I have started months or years ago starting recording?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're right. That's definitely where it gets in. You get into deep water when you have that limited amount of time to get your recording done and get it submitted. But you're right. Through the portfolio application that we had to do to get our jobs, we had to have very public recordings. I mean, I know I submitted things through YouTube of my most recent performances, and that was things that they viewed, as well as myself coming to play a recital and matching those recordings.
Right, because they want live recordings. I mean,
absolutely.
You can do a lot in the studio, but you can't do really much with live performances. They have to be exactly what they are.
And that live component, again, is why I try and record every single possible live performance I've ever done and I ever do, is to get some kind of archived version of it, so that if it's whiz-bang fantastic, then it can be used, and if not, then okay, it's just another performance and another kind of thing to file away as, I played and here's where I am and I can get better from this.
And I think one of the dangers, I was thinking about it, we were talking earlier about kind of the positive aspect of the recording, putting a little pressure.
Yep.
But I think it can go the other way too. If you don't have as many recordings and you're recording, say, your recital or something like that, saying, oh man, I got to get a good take on this, or oh man, this piece is going so well, I hope I get a good flub. And then,
yeah,
that has
when
happened.
Hasn't that happened before?
It's the worst. So I think one thing that we're kind of trying to impart here is record often, as much as you can.
And especially when doing recitals, we've already said that, auditions, you have like one take. Like, you have to prove yourself to that audition committee in one iteration of whatever excerpt you're playing. But for a recital, there are so many different ways that you can have quality recordings, or do runs to get something that you're really happy with. And like, I know that I've recorded a lot of my dress rehearsals for use. If that turns out to be something better than, the live performance, because, dress rehearsal still, that's a one-time take.
And it still is a performance too.
Still is a performance. And if nothing, it gives me, again, another run at doing whatever piece I'm going to do and whatever, in the moment kind of things that I'm going to feel as I'm doing it. So I record all my dress rehearsals as well. And if I can have as many recordings as possible, I have a lot more things to choose from. Okay, now we're going to take a short break and we're going to hear some words from our unofficial sponsor. Be back in a sec.
Hey, you with the mouth, come here.
Are you tired of offending everyone you meet?
Do children cry when you smile? Do you regularly eat onions before singing an opera? Well, this is for you. Smash Mouth mouthwash for musicians like you.
Fresh breath like a punch in the mouth.
Smash Mouth Mouthwash is not affiliated with anyone or anything ever and is not an official sponsor of the Complete Musician podcast. All right, so the next component of recording and the last little segment here is the use of recording as a composer. Now, the main angle that I was thinking about this is essentially, I use recordings as a composer to record demos for the clients to give them an idea of my interpretation of the piece, and I think it's useful in that regard. But I think the more interesting application is for if you're writing a piece, especially if it's for your instrument or for yourself, is to record it. And the reason being, because oftentimes with compositions, you don't really hear how the piece sounds until you hear it played live for the first time. And so being able to listen and then analyze and critique, that's a really important part of the editing process for me. What about you?
The live recording is way more informative than the MIDI recording I get off of Sibelius, because the notation software doesn't give you anything about phrasing or interpretation or any of the little nuances that make a piece really special.
But it's so accurate.
It's so accurate. Oh boy, and dead inside. It has no soul. And a real person, when I can sit down, like you said, for instance, when I write something for horn and piano and I can record both parts, exactly the interpretation and style I would play it, I learn so much about the composition and what needs to be tweaked in terms of balance, in terms of the way certain notes would clash with each other, and what kind of not so much like intonation or anything, but just the way the orchestration is, that sounds great on MIDI, but not so much, or has a different effect than what I was intending in the live performance for real people.
So I don't know about you, but I find that the opposite sometimes works too with, take a piece like horn and piano. There are certain things that sound clunky in MIDI, or maybe it's just the lack of expression, but a lot of things tend to work musically better when it's live. Same thing with horn ensemble music I've written. It's been dull in the MIDI version, but there's a certain ring and character that you get when you play it live that is really insightful.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I think those, as a composing standpoint, those are a few things that at least I've found useful for recording. Now, let's move on. How does one record? Well, I think you mentioned use your iPhone.
I use my phone. It's, like I said, the tone quality is terrible.
But most people have phones.
Yeah, but they're great for instant feedback and great for taking a video to see what you look like while you're playing in case you're doing any kind of crazy embouchure
I don't want to do
something.
That.
That's hate true, it. Though. It's awful. Yeah, it's as good as a mirror. It just, takes video.
And it's usually at that really unattractive low angle.
The worst double chin angle.
Right. Is that what I look like when I perform? Oh, no.
Yeah, that's right. Ooh, I should wear a bag over my head. Yeah, I just use my phone. Instant feedback. It gives me everything I need to know in terms of time, evenness of sound, intonation, all those kind of things that I'm listening for.
And phones, they're getting better and better and better with quality, both in video especially, and audio. Audio is still a little bit, to be desired. So if you want to do something a little higher than that, there's a lot of Zoom-type recorders or Tascam that have much higher quality microphones. I think those run, you can probably get older models between, 100 and 300 these days. I'm not sure.
If you go to somewhere like, I know one of the ones I got from Best Buy or something a while ago, I got an H4 Zoom, and I think when I price matched it, it was maybe $100 to $150 there. So really not that bad for the quality that it gives.
And you can record a long time given, whatever SD card you have too.
Yeah, I think I still have like upwards of 18 hours left that I could record on it. So I use it for, I think I got it 2 years ago, and I've been using the same SD card for all of my kids' recitals since like 2 years ago, and I've never had to change.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if you needed even more room than that, I think another option is recording right onto your laptop. Now, however, I don't know if you have watched any live stream recitals that are from people's laptops.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrible. And I think the reason why is because the microphone system on most laptops is so not advanced.
It's not good.
It overloads.
Yeah,
And all
it's
you get
always
is just tragic noise.
once you get that like way too loud, it just sounds like you're screaming into the microphone.
So that's an option, but it's not the best option. Now, if you have other microphones that you can plug into your computer, that's great. Now, that opens a whole series of doors, but it's also a whole bunch of problems, too, because when we're talking external microphones, you're also talking about cables and mic stands and tabletop USB audio interfaces, and I mean, the price will really go up.
It could get really expensive. Yeah.
Microphones, you can buy a single microphone for $80 or, $1,400 or even more. I mean, it's just, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So just having a phone, at least in the meantime, I think is probably the best kind of middle ground option.
Yeah, pedagogically, I think just, the fact that everyone now seems to have a smartphone and the ability, or maybe even a tablet if that has recording capability, the ability to put it on your stand, press record on a video, play for 20 seconds, stop, listen. Not enough people in my experience do it. And now that I do it a lot, just the playing level of whatever I have to perform is skyrocketed.
So the last thing I want to talk about is related to recording, and it is the positive or negative use of online distribution for your recordings. Now, the easier way of saying that is what should you and what should you not put up on, say, YouTube? 'Cause I don't know about you, but I've heard some pretty bad recordings on YouTube.
There's some really questionable music out there of things. And
there's some hilariously bad things that you just hope is fake.
Hopefully. I think that a general rule that I think maybe both of us try to abide by is if you don't want your name associated with it, then you probably shouldn't put it on the internet for everyone to see.
Because once it's up there, it's up there.
Forever.
And maybe you'll get better as a player. Hopefully you will. But it's still going to be up there.
And you don't want someone's first impression of you, if they Google you, to be not your absolute best. Really, really darn close to just nailing it.
So, I mean, if you are, recording your friend Timmy, and Timmy just got his first horn, Timmy's in 5th grade, and that's endearing, and that's
kind of
fine.
cute.
But if you're in college and you are preparing for a solo recital and you post a video of you running through something and it's just fraught full of errors, but you think it's okay, I would, I guess if you think it's okay, that's probably the bigger issue. But in general, I wouldn't do it unless it was pretty darn perfect.
I think if you have to question it, don't do it.
Right. So just be careful about how you represent yourself online. And I mean, online presence is a whole nother podcast, so we're not even going to get there yet.
Truth.
But that pretty much wraps up our discussion on recording.
Awesome.
Do you have anything else to add?
Recording is really great, and like I said, I do it now a lot, and I try to urge my students to do it, even though they just hate it because of, they have to be critical of themselves. But it really is the tool that makes you better, because you can hear what you need to work on. It makes you a better player, and it makes you a better teacher by diagnosing your own problems and fixing what needs to be worked on.
And that just about does it for episode 6, where we talked about recording today. So thanks everyone for listening.
We appreciate you guys listening and all your support. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and on YouTube. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, recipes, ideas for getting camel crickets out of my basement, please send us a message at our Gmail, coremotohorn@gmail.com, or send us a message on YouTube.
And today's saying is, I don't always listen to John Cage, but when I do,